What is over a decade of neuroscience and research showing us about how screens versus printed texts affect our kids? Are reading paper books better for kids than screens? Is convenience always what's best for us? If we knew that we were setting our kids back in their development, in their education, would we change it? In this video, I'm going to give you the 3 biggest benefits for our kids of printed books and texts over screen-based technology and texts. Hey everyone, Jonathan Morrow here, where I help you understand culture and live out a biblical worldview. What does the latest research say about reading screens in our kids' brains? Well, let's dive right in. In this video, I'm going to share why reading paper books is better than screens for your kids and their development, but also for us as well. But I want to share why. And I want to talk a little bit about technology. I want to talk about how the latest research is showing this. And I want to talk about 3 key benefits that you are going to get and your kids are going to get from reading paper books. Now, before I dive into some of the fascinating research on this, I want to share a quote by Neil Postman on technology, which I think is really, really vital for us to understand. Here's what he said. Technology always has unforeseen consequences. Technology always has unforeseen consequences. And it's not always clear at the beginning who or what will win or who or what will lose. Now, that's a vital thing for us to understand, because the reality is technology always changes things. It always affects things. And I would argue that as a net and a whole, we are losing when it comes to technology and how it's affecting us, our kids, the next generation, our culture. And while they may be convenient and they may be all everywhere all the time, screens are not helping us flourish in the ways we're called to flourish, not only in terms of just everyday life, but especially in terms of being a follower of Jesus. And so I want to talk about some of the brand new research on this and how it's affecting kids, and hopefully some changes that will be made as we think about this thing in terms of how we raise our kids. So I came across a recent article in The Guardian that documents some of this brand new research in terms of a groundbreaking study that shows that kids learn better on paper, not screens. Now what? The author is John MacArthur of The Guardian. He contributed this article. And we see reading scores plummeting across the country. We see kids struggling in their critical thinking skills. And for a long time, people are like, okay, why is that? Well, it turns out we now have a pretty good idea from the research, and not just common sense, about what screens are doing to our kids, their ability to read and think. And let's dive into some of the things that this article actually found. So one of the things that we're seeing is this contrast of deep versus shallow thinking. Here's what the article says. Until recently, there has been no scientific answer to this urgent question, but a soon-to-be published groundbreaking study from neuroscientists at Columbia University's Teachers College has come down decisively on the matter. For deeper reading, there is a clear advantage to reading a text on paper rather than on a screen, where shallow reading was observed. So the first thing you need to understand is that what we're seeing from the research now and being reported and starting to actually be documented is that deep reading happens when we're able to read text on a paper, a physical copy of something, a physical copy of a book, and we're seeing shallow thinking patterns and shallow reading observed when people are reading on screens. And so we could be reading the very same content on a screen or on a written text-based page, printed page, but the effect is very, very different. In fact, one of the researchers found that 4th grade is when a crucial shift occurs from what another researcher describes as learning to read to reading to learn. And so all of these things are pivotal for our formation and our development and our education, especially as we think about the next generation. As we dive in further to this article, here's what we find. We see deeper comprehension is possible. I would go even further than Froude in delineating what's at stake. This is what MacArthur says in the article. For more than a decade, social scientists, including the Norwegian scholar Anne Mangan, have been reporting on the superiority of reading comprehension and retention on paper. As Froude's team says in its article, reading both expository and complex texts from paper seems to be consistently associated with deeper comprehension and learning across the full range of social scientific literature. What does that mean? It means that for about 10 years now, people have known something very important, and they're documenting these things, that reading both complex text from paper is consistently associated with deeper comprehension and learning. That's key. So if we're continuing to push all of these screens into classrooms and all of these screens in everybody's hand, we're actually lessening the ability to have comprehension and real learning take place. And that's something we want to pay attention to if we care about our kids, if we care about the next generation, and we care about the state of education today. The article goes on and talks about robbing potential. And pay attention to this insight. The star panelist was the nation's leading expert on reading and the brain, John Gabrielli, an MIT neuroscientist who is skeptical about the promises of big tech and its salesmen. Quote, "I am impressed how educational technology has had no effect on scale, on reading outcomes, on reading difficulties, on equity issues," he told the New York audience. How is it that none of it has lifted on any scale reading, which was kind of the point? It's like people just say, hey, here's a product. If you can get it into 1,000 classrooms, we'll make a bunch of money, and that's okay, and that's our system. We just have to evaluate which technology is helping people and then promote that technology over the marketing of technology that has had or made no difference on behalf of students. It's all been product and not purpose. Now pay attention to this concluding line. I'll only take issue with the notion that it's okay to rob kids of their full intellectual potential in the service of sales before they even get started understanding what it means to think, let alone read. This is a very, very important insight because this leading MIT neuroscientist and researcher is saying, look, we're not putting more screens in front of kids because it demonstrates that it's actually working or there's a good evidence track record. Yes, it's convenient. Yes, it's efficient. But is it better? I think the evidence is saying no from a research standard. We've known that. I've been teaching kids and students and teens for close to 16, 17 years now. I've been teaching kids, student, teens in a lot of different environments for about 17 years now. And I can tell you point blank, there's no comparison. The ability to read and think critically and carefully has declined over that time. And their ability to navigate complex ideas has decreased over time. And their ability to pay attention and focus when screens are involved goes way, way down. So I would be in wholeheartedly agreeing with John Gabrielli on this topic because he's saying, look, we're robbing them of their potential at this key formational time, and it only makes the issues and problems worse when we come to this topic. The bottom line is more screens does not lead to better educational outcomes. It doesn't lead to better critical thinking and careful thinking. Actually, reading on a printed page makes a vast, big difference, whereas reading on a screen is actually less effective. So why should we care about this? Well, we care about this because knowledge is involved, and knowledge is what authorizes us to act. And there's a whole source and bodies of knowledge out there that our kids are supposed to understand. Education is about living well, not just testing well. It's not about just acquiring information. It's about learning how to understand and integrate knowledge. That's the classic idea of the university. That's kind of one truth among many, where things get oriented around a goal and a unified idea. Right now, we have a fragmented view of reality. We have a fragmented view of education, a fragmented view of knowledge, and now we are undermining the ability for kids and students to actually develop and learn how to think in those environments. And as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, we're called, according to Matthew 22, to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. We're not to be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And so if we're undermining our ability to think, that's a major discipleship issue when it comes to our kids and then following Jesus, wholly apart from the educational benefits of learning how to read from printed texts and taking notes on printed paper as opposed to everything always being on a screen all the time. Now, again, not a Luddite. I'm not saying we don't use technology, and there's not a time and a place for efficiencies and scale and things like that. However, if you are asking what is better for the child and what is better for the kid, a screen or a printed text, it's not close. And there are 3 reasons why it's beneficial for kids to read from print-based text as opposed to screen. The first one is this: you can actually focus. The only thing you are doing is reading that text, reading the book. You're not doing other things. You're not interacting with it. You're not touching it. You're literally holding it. You're thinking, you're reading. It's activating different parts of your brain. and it allows you to focus. It allows you to build your capacity to focus. And that's a really, really important idea. And that's an important thing that this generation is not getting. Okay? Here's the second thing. And it's related to the first. It eliminates distractions. I see all sorts of students and adults and all of us and me, when we read from our phones for very long, guess what happens? There's a ton of notifications that come up. We get distracted. There's something else we start doing on our phones, and then we're off and running, and we are now all over the place. We are no longer sitting with that idea, thinking carefully and critically about it. We're now running down rabbit trails and going off on all these tangents that we never set out to do because we've lost focus and we are now distracted. Reading a physical printed book helps us stay focused amidst the distractions. Now, I want to share the third reason because it's vital for us to understand that. But before I do, I want to tell you about something that I've created that I think is going to help you as a mom, as a dad, as a parent. And it's this guide. It's a free guide. You can click on the link there to get your guide. 5 questions every parent must answer before giving your kids social media. Now, one of the problems with our screens, and probably the constant source of interruption that you feel, is this idea of social media always bombarding our kids and grabbing their attention. And I want to help you navigate that. So I've created a guide that helps you know how to know when and if to give your kids social media, your tweens, your teens, and what that dynamic looks like. So 5 questions every parent must answer before giving your kids social media. Click that link to get the free guide. Now, the final reason and benefit of reading print-based texts is deeper thinking. We know this from the study, but we also know this from common sense. We know this because you have to be able to work out your mind and your brain like a muscle to increase your capacity to learn how to think and make connections. And if we're always distracted in our thinking, we don't make connections with other bodies of knowledge. And the benefit of a Christian worldview is it integrates all of those things into a whole. They are connected. If all truth is God's truth, then those things are connected. And we need to help ourselves think well about those things, help our kids do that as they have discipleship of the mind, as they think through why they believe what they believe, why it matters, who they're becoming, what is true, how do I know what's true, how do I engage with people who believe differently than me. All of those things require deeper thinking. And the more you're able to sit with the text and focus, not be distracted, and stay with an idea longer than 10 seconds, you grow your capacity to think more deeply and then allow that deep thinking to begin to transform the way you view the world and ultimately the way you live and react in everyday life. So it's a massive, massive opportunity. So the bottom line is simply this. Reading paper books is better than screens for our kids. So what is that going to change in your life, in my life? How can we tone down some of the screens? Not all of them, because we live in a modern world. There's going to be realities to that. But wherever you can and wherever is reasonable, use a printed book. If your school gives a list of digital-only options, maybe buy a few used copies of physical books and have your kids read those as well. That will make a massive difference. It will help them engage and focus. It will help you engage and focus as well. We are a distracted culture, and it's affecting our kids. And if they're the future, which they are, and we want them to flourish as human beings, which we do, then we need to recover some things that we know from both research and common sense that will help set them up for success in the future. So, have you read a good book lately? Make sure you pick one up and actually read one, a physical copy. That way you can turn down the noise, increase your focus, eliminate distractions, and promote deeper thinking. And I'll see you in the next video.